Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. My name is Huda London. This is the case of the Idaho. I like to talk about Pappa Rogers. Pappa Rogers was a person who came out on social media giving us hints about the crime scene, the victims, the cable. He was basically playing games, arguing on social media, discussing with people, and many people thought that Pappa Rogers was Brian Koberger. The detectives confirmed after the pre-deal that it wasn't Koberger. So that is important to remember. Now my question is, if Pappa Rogers wasn't Koberger, and it couldn't have been Brent Kopaka because the messages were still going on, Pappa Rogers was still sending out articles and statements and text messages after Brent Kopaka was unalived and after BK was arrested. So who was Pappa Rogers? Because I believe Pappa Rogers is definitely linked to this crime. Pappa Rogers says, regardless of what has been released, I believe this is a sexually motivated crime. Strange. His messages started coming out on the 15th, 2 days after the unalivings. That rings a bell to me because 4chan Anonymous started out his articles on 4chan on the 15th. And on the 15th of November, it could be a coincidence, was Hannah Claire's birthday. Pappa Rogers said that the escape route by vehicle here is very poor. And yet again, they're focusing on vehicles. So I believe Pappa Rogers was someone local, somebody involved in these crimes or somebody who knew about the crimes, who was telling us things, giving us hints, playing games. And I always believed that the suspects came by a vehicle, but there were many that came on foot because we're seeing them running around that night. Pappa Rogers asks, thoughts on the body placements, second floor? Who do you think Pappa Rogers was? If it wasn't BK and it wasn't Brent Kopaka, then it had to be someone from the uni. Somebody was definitely trying to imitate Koberger, maybe to get him arrested. Second floor. Do you remember that Steve Gongalves said that there was a hell of a fight upstairs? He meant in the second floor. So was Zana and Ethan the main targets? Or was Kaylee the main target since she got the most injuries? Why the crime scene forensics in the living room if nothing happened there? I believe it started all in the kitchen and living room. So Pappa Rogers was putting everything up on Facebook. Zana's room. So was Zana the main target? He was very focused on the second floor. And I believe he came in from the front door because the front door was left wide open. But if there was 3 suspects, because there's 3 unidentified male DNAs, they could have come in and escaped from behind the house, from the sliding door and the front door. Wonder what Zana's father was fixing. Which locks was he fixing? Pappa Rogers was definitely a narcissistic. This is a discussion of the case. You are participating by choice. Pappa Rogers knew everything. I'm talking about red liquid from inside the house ending up on the outside of the house. So he's talking about the red liquid that was coming from Xana's room. May she rest in peace. Look at the kitchen door. You can see red liquid there. Pappa Rogers is telling us that there was red liquid inside the house and it seeped to the outside. I always believed that the fight started in the living room. Most likely when Xana and Ethan were on their way home. These were the pictures Pappa Rogers was putting up. The living room walls look like they have red liquid, and the door. These are not the pictures we saw at the crime scene. I feel like blood ran down a few places, but it has been suppressed. The kitchen was dripping red liquid, but they won't admit it. These are typically the antisocial personality disorder psychopaths, SKs, that play with the police and start giving out hints till they get caught. But this person knew everything. He could have been one of the suspects and he got away easily. It could have been one of the fraternity brothers. 4chan was giving us hints about the Sigma Chi fraternity. Pappa Rogers was telling us how the crime was committed on the crime scene. And that had nothing to do with Brian Kohlberger. So there had to be other people involved. I feel like the white car is irrelevant. That's what Pappa Rogers said, and I agree with him. That was to distract us. That was a red herring. So they're still discussing the white car, but Pappa Rogers does not believe it's relevant. No evidence yet. Strange. That's when they came up with the touch DNA, because they couldn't collect evidence. BK was never there. He must have been outside. I believe he came to collect something, but I don't believe he entered the house. 4 weeks and no suspects. What is the motive? Good question. Crime of passion? Money? Revenge? What is the motive? Up to today, they have no motive. Although motive is not important in the rule of law, motive is always interesting for juries to connect things, to have understanding. There was no proper motives because I believe there was plenty of motives, but BK wasn't involved. Just in my opinion. This is someone talking to Pappa Rogers. I like his theory. He said, my theory. Ex-boyfriend didn't want to lose the dog and was sick of the games Kaylee was playing. Parents admitted to her playing games with him. He unalived everyone else to isolate her, to potentially say something to her. Multiple people are covering for him and are under immense pressure currently by Ellie and his alibi, and the driver of the Elantra supposedly he was staying at a friend's. If you pay attention, this is exactly what WSU Mom Kim said. Jack Decor didn't have a proper alibi. His professor was concerned. His professor referred him to counseling, which he did not go. His professor was concerned after his breakup with Kaylee. That's what the professor said. It's written on the reports. He could have been the person allegedly stalking Kaylee. He got himself a lawyer, attorney, in the middle of the interview, his first interview. The question is why? He was one of the first people on the scene. And he was more concerned about his dog, Murphy, than asking about Kaylee, who was unalived inside the house, in my opinion. Why would the mayor say it was a crime of passion to begin with? Where was Jack D that night? Because he said in his report that he came home at 1 a.m. and he fell asleep at 1:30. But the screenshot that the whole world has seen with Jack D sitting and talking to Kaylee and Mandy standing was at 1:32. He couldn't have been home at 1 a.m. and have fallen asleep at 1:30 when at 1:32 he was at the corner club. Pappa Rogers wants to know why was the knife the weapon of choice. Because I personally believe it was personal. Knives are always more personal, more intimate, more anger. The person wants to get personal on you. Whether it's of love, hate, revenge, it's more aggressive. Do we think the killer took anything from the house? Yes, I do believe. Because the house was tossed upside down. The sofas were ripped apart. There were shoes all over the place. There was papers thrown all over in Did.Mpd's room and in Xana's room. I believe the place was checked properly. Were they checking for rugs or money? Just my opinion. This was interesting. Pappa Rogers, just an odd question, so gave a nonsensical answer. Then he says, about the height, the person could have been between 5'6" and 6'3". He could have weighed 165 to 235 pounds. In other words, could be made of any weight or height. So DM was just guessing a height. And I know she guessed Stefan Salvador from Vampire Diaries' height, because that was what she was watching. The bushy eyebrows came from there and the height came from there. In my opinion. Although I can see that clearly. The guy he's chatting with doesn't agree. So they were having discussions about the suspect, his weight, height, the knives, the cable that could have been used, the evidence. Pappa Rogers should have been questioned immediately. Who was he? Was he one of the Davids? Allegedly. One of the Jacks? Could it have been Jack K? Allegedly. There was somebody playing games. Was it Hunter? Just a question. It could have been anyone. Because we know that for a fact it wasn't Koberger, according to the detective. So who was it? Because he knew everything about the crime scene, the victims, the struggle in the second floor. He knew everything. The conversation gets heated and he says it matters. If you're creating a profile of a very violent unaliver suspect. So were you trying to say, Pappa Rogers, that this wasn't violent enough? He's creating even a profile of the suspect. On the 13th of December, Pappa Rogers still wanted to know if the person who unalived the Idaho was still in Moscow. Let's not forget, Brent Kopacker and Koberger were around. Brent Kopacker was unalived between the 14th to the 15th of December, 2022. On the 15th of December is when Koberger and his father drive to Pennsylvania. So a lot is going around this time when Pappa Rogers is asking us if the unaliver was still in Moscow, Idaho. So he knew everything. Pappa Rogers, he's still in Moscow. He's comfortable there. I agree with him, because if somebody unalived 4 people and was watching that the police and the community were just going wild and they couldn't find the suspect, then the suspect would have felt clearly comfortable to hang around and play games. So Pappa Rogers is trying to say the person who did this will get caught eventually. So he's trying to say the person would have still lived, because now his targets are all unalived. I wonder who that was. But he eventually will get caught, according to Pappa Rogers. Obviously, people talk. I believe one day the truth will come out. But then the question is, would it be too late? What if something happens to BK in prison? What is the occupation of the suspect, in your opinion, is this question. I believe it's a hunter. Somebody who has hunting skills, who has knife skills, just in my opinion. And Jack Showalter definitely has that. Just saying. This is all my thoughts and my speculations only. He seems to have an answer for everything. So pay attention. 4chan post in the green was made on 12th of December 2022. And this post was also made on December 12th. The post I was just reading to you. So isn't it interesting that 4chan and Pappa Rogers were posting all at the same time? They were giving us hints and clues, or were they the suspects themselves, is my question. Was it ever investigated? Now that we know that Pappa Rogers wasn't BK, who was he? He seems to know everything about the unalivings, and so does 4chan. Let me know what you're thinking about these guys. But I really believe Pappa Rogers either is one of the suspects or either he knows everything. One of the fraternity brothers. Possibly. They're ratting each other out. Now Pappa Rogers is talking about law enforcement. He's wondering why they're misleading people. I'll end with this one. He says, because law enforcement just love their tip lines. Being out of control for red herring. They got so much spare time to throw out red herrings. I roll till they get till they get stuck in the back of my head. So he's trying to say that law enforcement was misleading us, giving us misdirections, according to Pappa Rogers only, not me. The white Hyundai was a red herring, according to Pappa Rogers. I believe people came on foot and with a black truck, not a white Hyundai Elantra. Let me know what you think, guys. Please like, share and subscribe. May the victims rest in peace.